Everyone and their mom is in medical affairs. Shout out to medical affairs. We love you guys so much. But from an HEOR perspective, we work with a lot of those areas.
What if HEOR did not exist?
HEOR is trying to define, does this drug not only work, but is it worth it from an economic, clinical, and humanistic perspective. And when I say humanistic, all I'm referring to is real world patients. Like, my research is helping physicians choose between drug A or drug B because of the clinical economic value that it draws. I was like, that's the impact. That's what I want to do. And if you don't have HEOR, you can't answer those questions.
Can we talk about salary ranges?
I would say the range now would probably be 130 to 150. And from there, you're well into, probably 500,000 plus. So there is money to be made in pharma.
Money to be made, money to be had. Welcome to Pharmacy Pathways. I am sitting here with Dr. Ashley Saunders, who is at the intersection of public health and clinical pharmacy. We are going to be addressing a topic that was specifically requested. Apparently, there are people that are looking online and they cannot find the answers that they're looking for. So we're bringing the answers to the questions that you asked about health economics and outcomes research.
Yep.
It's a tongue twister.
It is. It's a lot.
It's also known as HEOR. She is going to talk about her role and her experience. She has her MPH and she also has her doctorate in pharmacy. Those are both going to be important as we get into what she does on a day-to-day basis. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, we just want to set the foundation, make sure we're all on the same page.
Yes.
Health economics outcomes research, which we will refer to as HEOR, the rest of the podcast.
Some people say all the letters and some say HEOR. So whatever floats your boat.
Okay, we're gonna mix it up, man. But could you just give us a simple definition of what HEOR is?
Absolutely. The most simple definition I can give you is health economics outcomes research evaluates the value of a healthcare intervention clinically, economically, and from a real world perspective. So from a patient perspective. In other words, HEOR is trying to define, does this drug not only work, but is it worth it from an economic, clinical, and humanistic perspective. And when I say humanistic, all I'm referring to is real world patient worldview. So that's really what it's all about. We're trying to go beyond just does it work clinically and efficaciously and in a safety perspective, but is it worth that value? Is the squeeze worth the juice, right? And we're trying to speak to not just patients who care about things like, does this work in my population? Does it help my quality of life? But we're also trying to, from a payer's perspective, does this drug show downstream cost reduction?
Yeah.
Is it worth me putting it on my formulary? And if you don't have HEOR, you can't answer those questions. And so you're going to have a lot of claim denials and delays because the payers don't have any additional data to demonstrate why I should put this drug on my formulary because there's so many options, but there's no additional evidence to demonstrate that this product is better than this product. HEOR is generating that data to hone in on that.
Okay. If you can give us a little bit about yourself and your journey as to how you got here today at your current role.
So just a quick intro about me. So my name's Ashley Saunders. I'm actually from Augusta, Georgia, but I have kind of made my way up the East Coast throughout my educational career. So now I'm based in New Jersey. My educational background, so I started off in public health. So University of Georgia, go Bulldogs. That's where I got my bachelor's in public health. And that's where I knew I wanted to pursue the pharmacy world, but also kind of be like a public health pharmacist, right? Because I was for the people, by the people. I really wanted to use my skills to impact their health. So from there, I went to UNC Chapel Hill for pharmacy school. That's where me and Dominique met. Go Hills. So I have my PharmD and my MPH from the University of North Carolina. And then after that, to enter into the industry, I did a 2-year PharmD postdoctoral fellowship within USHEOR with Rutgers and Bristol Myers Squibb. And that was my official shoe-in into the industry. So I did that in 2 years from 2020 to 2022. And then after the fellowship was over, they hired me full time, and I worked with them for Bristol Myers Squibb for 3 years. And then I just actually started a new role at a company called Beringer Ingelheim. And this month makes officially 7 months into this new role. And now I'm the US HEOR lead for the early pipeline assets in the cardiorenal metabolic space. So that's a little bit about my journey, and happy to take a deeper dive.
Before you keep going, early asset, what does that mean?
So early asset, it's interchangeable between early asset and early pipeline. So that just means that these are products that are still being studied in like preclinical phase 1 development.
Okay.
And there's like there's tiers.
Yeah.
So if you're in that space, you're considered early asset, early development. And again, HEOR is impactful and useful throughout the entire life cycle from preclinical to launch and even post-launch. But the space I work in is that early development, preclinical phase 1, phase 2. Early asset just means this is a still very early molecule that we're studying, we're testing, and launch is anticipated for 5+ years from now.
Okay. And I think it's also helpful to give more context. You work for the pharmaceutical
Mhm.
industry,
Mhm.
okay, but you're not what we usually hear, like medical affairs, or
Yeah,
we usually hear those big buzzwords.
absolutely.
Okay.
They're common. I always joke that everyone and their mom is in medical affairs. Shout out to medical affairs. We love you guys so much. They are very popular for various reasons.
Yeah.
Right? They play a big role in the clinical aspect of, the disease landscape, in trying to articulate what's the disease, who are the patients that need this medication,
Yeah.
the clinical impact, all the things. So they matter in all those regards. But from an HEOR perspective, we we work with a lot of those areas. We work with medical. We work with market access. Market access will probably in field HOR would be our closest counterparts in terms of our day-to-day strategy and discussion and alignment per se. One of the things about HEOR that I love is it's very cross-collaborative. We have to be really, because the evidence that we generate rolls into other cross-functional tactics like medical or commercial, depending on some companies have HEOR under medical, some people have them under commercial. But yeah, we're constantly having those alignment and cross-functional discussions just to make sure that the evidence that we're generating is speaking to the need for that, for that one, for the asset, but also for the specific teams. That rolls up into the broader asset strategy, right? So yeah, it's always constant communication with our cross-functional partners.
You kind of already started answering some of the questions that HEOR professionals are looking for, what you're tasked for understanding and knowing. But I'm just going to ask it again, like
Sure.
to go into a deeper level, because I know you gave like a high level review.
Yeah.
But what are some additional questions that it's your responsibility to answer, or even come up with
Yeah.
in the first week?
I think the biggest question we are constantly asking ourselves is, what is the true impact of this product into whom? Who is going to who's going to be impacted the most with this product, and at what cost? So we're trying to figure out, how is our product better than the standard treatment of care that's already on the market? Does our product provide any additional economic value or benefit to, said customers of importance like payers? So do we see downstream costs that would relieve the healthcare system? So does our product prevent additional hospitalizations? Does our product prevent safety concerns that would cost the healthcare system or even payers more money?
Yeah.
How is our product differentiating ourselves? Does our product provide benefit to other special populations? Is it, more high risk patients in this particular disease state? Is it the elderly population? Is it younger? Because a lot of times we're thinking of certain disease states that we only focus on the older population, but things like obesity, there is no age range for that. That's affecting almost 40% of the population within the US. Does our product impact diverse and, right, and ethnic, populations? Does our evidence provide niches where we're able to provide healthcare outcome benefits to specific, groups? And then we're thinking of things like is our product cost effective? And if so, what does that look like? How is that going to impact both patients and payers?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so many questions that we're trying to ask in terms of drawing in that value, even from a patient. Does it improve functionality for them?
Yeah.
Is it reducing symptom burden? Like, these are questions that we have to ask that you just don't get with your general clinical trial data.
Yeah. So all the stakeholders, essentially.
Absolutely. The big players that we have to target in terms of our, like, key audience per se would be, patients, payers, and physicians. Those are the folks that those are the key decision makers in terms of who gets access to the product. Because it's one thing to develop this drug and it's great, it's innovative, but if no one can access it, if no one can, go to the pharmacy and get it, then what's the point? So we're trying to make sure that we're generating evidence that will drive access and that patients can actually use it and have benefit from it. So but before the patient gets it, we got to speak to the payers, the insurance companies, to make sure that we are giving them what they need to do that. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, because I don't think that we're really fully considering like everybody who's involved in the
Decision-making process.
decision-making process, and then the overall outcome of what makes a drug successful or not. Because even if it's very effective but not affordable, especially depending on the patient, the main population that disease state is affecting, that makes a difference.
Absolutely. Wholeheartedly.
So you guys are at the foundation of the brainstorming process before the financial and time investment really gets going.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are. And we work with the pricing team as well, because sometimes they reach out to us needing additional evidence to help them define what is an economically justifiable price. And this is only when, from my current role, because again, we're in the early phase of development, so preclinical phase 1. And so and it's really interesting for me, as a learning point, because I realize, like, you're right, like, you still have to consider what will be our price and what's the market saying, and then also speaking to, patients, affordability and all of these other, and then you have to think of all of the different governmental um elements that are involved, IRA, and like, there's so many things that go into play. And so, yeah, there's so many opportunities for us to be at the table and help inform decisions, whether it's pricing, whether it's helping people understand, okay, what's the unmet need within this disease state, so that it can help us further inform the strategy, inform how do we recruit for our trial. You can't really figure out who you're properly recruiting unless you do your proper research on who's affected by this disease and those unmet needs. So we do a lot of forecasting in the early space as well to help inform who should be in the trial and how the trial should be designed. So it's really cool, because I didn't even know the HEOR plays a role in that. So
In your role, in your current role, and before asking this, I do want you to respond in a way that is relevant to you personally, but also in a general sense as well, because I know roles can vary.
yeah.
But what might your day to day or your week to week look like? You have a lot of questions to answer. You have a lot of data to get through and analyze. Give us a standard week for you.
Yeah. And it's so funny you say standard, because every week is a different week. It's never a dull moment. That's one of the things that I love about industry. There's never nothing ever happens twice. Like, it's always something different, right? But I'll say a week for me could look like, it's probably very meeting heavy. So I'm meeting with all of my cross-functional partners. So for us, as for HEOR, we have a list. We call it a book of work. So for the year, we have a list of research questions, research studies, or we have a list of research questions that tie into different studies that we need to generate throughout the year. Excuse me, that will answer certain questions or meet certain unmet needs for, it could be medical, it could be the clinical team, it could be for the field or market access needs or pricing needs. And so I'm in meetings with all those folks throughout the year. Throughout the week, to just discuss and align on what those projects are, what those topics are. Is everything making sense? And one thing I will say about the early asset space, it is very dynamic. It's fluid. It's always changing. So you could think you have an asset that's going to progress, and then 1 week later, it's like it's done, it's terminated. Oh, so there's a lot of, like, fluidity and changes that are bound to happen. So you could be heavy in the works on doing something for a particular asset, but it could be obliterated in the next week or so, or
Oh,
month
wow.
or so. So it's always forever changing. But I'm in those meetings, having those discussions with my cross-functional partners. If it's a new asset, we probably are in like a long workshop to introduce the broad team to this particular asset. What is it? What's the mechanism of action? Maybe some points from the trial data, if there is any. Trying to figure out, okay, what's our strengths, our weaknesses, in terms of kind of positioning the asset in the market. What's the competitive landscape look like? For obesity, it is absolutely insane.
I bet.
GLP-1s, we shout out to those. But and so we're having meetings to try to figure out, okay, what's our strategy? How do we position ourselves in the market? What matters to us right now? How do we develop a trial that is going to be relevant in 10 years? But we're working on it right now. I'm in meetings all week about stuff like that. And so one week it could be very meeting heavy. I'm in workshops all week. I'm in meetings all week. And then I'm also presenting what studies I need to do to address the gaps that we have for our product, or just gaps that we may have just to understand the landscape, right? Who are these patients? What's the patient population? What does the data say about what they're currently being treated with? Is there a current standard of treatment? And if it's not, what does that mean for us and our asset? So I'm presenting those propositions to the team and getting alignment, getting their insights so that I can kind of, um, further develop my strategy to generate the data. And yeah, so it could be very dynamic. One week could be very busy and overwhelming in a sense, and then another week it's light. I'm waiting for the vendor to, get back with me with the data. So there's nothing I need to do, or we've done all the workshops, so my meetings are a bit more spaced out. So I have some time to get some extra work done, do some extra reading. So yeah, it's always, not the same, which is I really appreciate that.
And what are you reading? When you're not in meetings
Yeah.
and you're catching up on reading, what are you reading?
I think for the most part right now, it's what's the competitive landscape, the competitive market. Right now, there's a big direct to consumer market in terms of cash paying, willingness to pay market in terms of patients paying out of pocket for their obesity medications. How do we need to structure our asset from a pricing or, payer perspective to reach those audiences?
Yeah.
So I'm reading up about, what the competitors are doing in that space. And then you have the Trump RX. What does that mean for us? And then just reading up on the cardiorenal metabolic disease space in general. What's up and coming, what new data is hot off the press in terms of, is it genetic mutations? Is it new biomarkers that we need to pay attention to that, someone's just published in the literature? Yeah, things like that, just to kind of keep it fresh and keep it relevant so that if there's anything that I need to present to the team, like, hey guys, have we considered XYZ? I can take that back and we can have those strategic discussions.
So I'm hearing that there's a lot of skill sets that you're probably doing that you're not aware of on a weekly basis. Like your
Yeah.
brain is just going in and out of different skill sets that are required to be effective at your role.
Yeah,
So you have to be very good at reading clinical trials, interpreting data.
absolutely. Absolutely. What else? You're right on the money. Having to be able to decipher and navigate what's happening in the clinical trials. And this is the thing that is really cool. For us, like, real world data is messy. Even trial data can be all over the place. The skill set that we have to have as HEOR scientists is being able to extract and screen through all that messy data and be able to draw out the credible and valuable insights. So being able to translate the messiness into strategy
Mm.
and being able to translate that to the proper stakeholders accordingly. So how I will translate specific HUR data to my payers would look different to how I need to translate it to patients, because patients care about XYZ, payers may not. And so it's just a matter of having the skill sets to pull through all the fluff the limitations, like data sources that we use to generate data, there are a lot of limitations. It's not going to be perfect. We're not going to get and extract all the data and the endpoints that we want, but being able to still screen through, analyze, and pull out what's valuable, what's needed, what answers the question to the best of what the data tells us, um, and being able to articulate that appropriately. So yes, reading through the clinical trial data, analytical skills, being able to utilize and create different study designs, whether it's retrospective, prospective, observational study designs, using claims databases, electronic healthcare records, and having experience with those different type of data sources. Because it won't always be claims, it won't always be registries, but it could, having the familiarity with those different sources. Modeling, economic modeling is a big one where we're thinking about the cost effectiveness and the what drives those economic value narratives. We're trying to do it through modeling, Markov models, predictive models. What else? And then from the patient perspective, I'm one of those HEOR scientists that loves patient-reported outcomes and loves hearing the patient perspective on how does this drug make me feel,
Yeah.
right? And so we got to figure out, okay, well, how do we run patient preference analysis? So you need to have experience with that, because again, we're defining the value clinically, economically, and humanistically, and that just means from a patient perspective. And so having the skills to tie all that together is important.
All right, wonderful. So we need to know the lingo of the research world, the clinical study world,
Yeah.
of pharmaceutical industry world, and who are you working with? Who is showing up to these meetings and
Yeah.
involved in the collaboration within your industry?
Absolutely. So for the early asset side, it's a little different if your product's a bit more mature, closer to launch. But the early asset team looks like myself, the HEOR lead, and again, I work in the US space, and so we'll have global support as well, because when you're so early in the process, global tends to lead a lot of the discussions, which is interesting because we tend to launch first in the US. But global is there, global HEOR, global medical, they're a part of the strategy driving process. My US medical affairs person, my market access. So at Behringer, they call it value leads.
Okay.
And again, the title of the roles are interchangeable depending on what company you work at. But my value lead is there. My pricing lead is there as well. And then we also have something called a market research lead, and they're doing a lot of the market research. Like, what is the market saying about this space, right? And they'll work with vendors to generate a lot of that data. They're there as well. So yeah, those are kind of like the key players on the early asset space. So some of global, and then from the US team, those folks that I mentioned.
Are there other skills or things that you're doing, like preparing a PowerPoint presentation, or
Yeah.
are you actually the one who is typing up the data and how it's going to be
Yeah.
prepared and how it's going to show up in a reading on or online article or the SDA package insert?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yes and no. So one of the cool things about Pharma is we work with third-party vendors, organizations who help us make it look pretty, per se. For the most part, I would draft up the abstract. So yes, you need to have great communication, writing skills. You need to know how to draft up a report or an abstract. But sometimes, depending on support and budget, you'll have a team that can maybe do the first draft for you.
Yeah.
And then you go in because it's your data. So they can only do the draft, make sure the word count, all the rules and things for that conference or for that manuscript or that journal. They'll make sure all that's there, but you put the meat into it
Okay.
because you're the lead. You know the data, you know the evidence. And once all that meat is in there, the words, everything lines up, it makes sense. The publication team will make sure that it's polished, it's going through multiple rounds of reviews across the team, including you as the study lead, and then they'll submit it on your behalf to the conference. If you're targeting a conference, whether that be an abstract or a poster. Go back to your original question. When I'm doing research and we're working with the vendor, I give them the strategy. I give them what's the objective, what's the research question, right? What are the primary, secondary objectives? What's the outcomes of interest? This is the study design. This is the study population we're looking into. I'll work with the vendor to make sure that their methodology in place is makes sense. It's capturing all the data, all the patients that we need to do to run the analysis with, and then they have everything that they need. They'll run it, and then they'll bring it back, and they typically have the data presented in table shells in Excel. So you need to know how to navigate Excel, right? But they'll also give you the high level results in a PowerPoint slide. So being able to navigate those things is important too. It's nothing fancy like, like a specific program that they use. It's still PowerPoint, it's still Excel, it's still Word. But having some of those writing skills is important, communication skills is important. Yeah, so I think those are, the basics is there. I think what we need as HEOR scientists, we just have to, again, know the strategy, know the need, and be able to translate that into proper, value. If that makes sense.
And I like how you say scientist. You think you would say like pharmacist, but you consider yourself a scientist.
Yes, that's the term. Yeah.
I love that. So for the average HEO scientist, is this usually a salary position?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Mostly salary.
Meaning the hours can vary week to week.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's your typical 40-hour week on paper, Monday through Friday. I don't know a company that has their employees working on weekends, unless you work for a CRO, which we could talk about in terms of, where pharmacists can work in different areas of HEOR.
Yeah.
But in pharma, as an HEOR scientist, it's a typical standard 40-hour week. You're mostly salary, but I think that can vary depending on if you work at a larger company versus a smaller company versus a startup company. It can look different. Work-life balance, it's there. It's there. That's one of the things that I love about my job and working in pharma. The flexibility is there. I'm a fully remote employee, and we love it. Okay, we love it here. And so there's so much flexibility. And every day, like I mentioned, like every week, every day doesn't look the same. Like some days I start at 8 a.m., some days I start at 7 a.m. because I work for a German company, and our German colleagues, we have to adapt to or I guess accommodate the time difference.
Yes.
Right. And so some days I start at 7 a.m. And if I do, then I make sure that I try to end my day a little earlier so I'm not working those extensive hours.
Yeah.
But to your point, it may not look like a 9 to 5 every day.
Yeah.
Right. It could be a 7 to 5. It could be a 8 to 6. There's some days where I haven't closed my it's going on 7 o'clock and I'm still working, trying to wrap up, maybe a PowerPoint slide or preparing for another meeting the next day. But again, every day is not the same. Some days I have no meetings. And let me tell you, that's fun. So it's always, it's very versatile. And so, I know it's a lot, and I've talked a lot about all the things that you do and need to do and the skill sets you obtain, but there's a lot of flexibility on what your work week could look like.
Excuse me. I hope you don't mind if I cut in for a moment.
Hurry up.
Number 1, thank you for watching. I hope you're learning something new in this episode. Number 2, which is the reason I'm here, is if you don't mind, could you be so kind and like this video or hit the subscribe button?
I mean, I've always subscribed.
By subscribing, you're letting YouTube know that my content is providing you value, and that ultimately helps the channel grow and reach more people who need to hear these conversations. You can also subscribe to the Pharmacy Pathways newsletter to get access to exclusive episode content. Newsletters go out in the same week of the episode. You'll receive a structured summary of each interview, expanded guest bios, and exclusive sneak peeks of future episodes. Subscribe at pharmacypathways.org. Link is in the description. Oh, and one more thing.
Hurry up!
If there's a specific topic or career you'd like to see featured, you can let me know by filling out the audience feedback survey on my website. And if you'd like to be a guest, there's a guest sign-up form on my website as well. Both of those links are in the episode description. Okay, let's get you back to the show.
So yeah, it's definitely work-life balance. Some roles, there's a lot of work travel that's involved because as a researcher, you publish data. So you're a published researcher. So that means you got to go to conferences. You got to, whether it's in the United States or international, on top of managing your work week. So it's really just balance, prioritizing. So those are definitely skills that I probably didn't mention that you need, time management and
Yes.
knowing when and how to prioritize, because you won't be able to do everything in one day.
Yeah.
And so knowing what's important, what needs to get done by end of day, doing that, and then not feeling guilty to push everything else to the next day or the next day.
And do most HEOR scientists, do they work remote? And
You know, we're in a different climate these days. I will say yes. I'm seeing more HER roles as remote. However, it depends on the company you work for. It
Okay.
depends on the company you work for, because you have, post-pandemic, you have some companies that still want their employees in the office for X amount of days throughout the week. But when you're looking at roles online, it'll show, you'll see a lot of them either say hybrid these days or for remote. So they're becoming more common than they used to be, which I like, because again, as a researcher, it's not like I need to be in a lab. I need to be in the office to do what I need to do. So I think they are tying into that flexibility that comes with the job.
And can we talk about salary ranges? Because that's important for
Yes.
people. And we're not asking for your salary.
Yeah.
I'm asking for a range
Absolutely.
of what to expect if you're in this arena.
Yeah, so I think transparency is important, especially when you're new to what all of this is in pharma. Because really, outside of, if you have no experience, it's almost like a black hole. Like, what do you guys do on that side of the world, right? Let alone how much you make. So I'll say this. So when you finish pharmacy school, let's say you want to go into HEOR, you can do a postdoc fellowship, and then after your fellowship, you'll likely enter into maybe entry-level roles, which would be manager, senior manager. Manager, senior manager, that range falls between, and I have to think of like 2026 and not when I was a senior manager, which was like 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. I would say the range now would probably be 130 to 150, right? 130,000, 150,000 for senior manager, senior manager. And then for me, I don't think I said this, I'm an associate director within my role. And so associate director, and again, it also depends on location. So if you're on the West Coast, these numbers might be a bit higher to accommodate the, cost of living. If you're in the Northeast, they also might be a bit higher to accommodate cost of living. So I have to factor that in. But for associate director roles, they can range from, I want to say 170 to 220,000. And then, and again, and I'm kind of going in tiers, the next level would likely be director. But at Boehringer Ingelheim, they have something called a senior associate director.
Okay.
But typically it's manager, senior manager, associate director, director. That range could be probably 250 to 300,000. And then from director, you have executive director. And then I think it's senior executive director before you start getting into like your vice president and senior vice president. And from there, you're well into, probably 500,000 plus. So there is money to be made in pharma.
Money to be made, money to be had.
And the thing, absolutely, it pays the bills. I always tell people that it pays the bills.
So I do want to get into more of who technically can be a HEOR scientist, because you're a pharmacist, right? So I'm sure there's other healthcare professionals who are operating under this role. Can you give us a list of different healthcare professionals you've seen in this
Yeah,
space?
absolutely. Believe it or not, I've seen non-professional roles in this space. I've seen epidemiologists, I've seen biostatisticians as HEOR professionals. I even had one person who was in field HEOR, and their background was as a dietitian. So but then outside of those roles, of course, you have your PharmDs. I've seen some MDs. But the main backgrounds that I've seen that are the most popular are PharmDs and PhDs.
Okay.
PhDs are great, and I think they hold a lot of weight because of the technical skills, the research skills that they bring. PharmDs are great because in addition to the research and the technicality that we bring, we have the clinical credibility, right? We know how to read and navigate clinical trials. We have believe it or not, we have an understanding of the payer and formulary landscape. I mean, that's all my pharmacists out there that stay on the phone with insurance companies. You know the struggle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think those are the main two. I'd see PharmDs, PhDs, and then you have your I wouldn't say non-professional, but your other backgrounds, including, public health, epidemiologist and the like. Yeah, but it's vast. You can be from all walks of life. And I think if you have the skill sets, you have some of that educational background that we'll probably get into, I say, yeah, go for it.
That's what I have coming up next.
Okay.
But before we go there, I did just want to clarify, because you made a hint to it earlier,
Okay.
that there are different arenas, not just the pharmaceutical industry, that HEOR scientists can work in.
Mhm.
And you gave an acronym. It started with a C.
Oh, CROs?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
It is the consultant research organizations. So you're essentially what we consider your vendors. That I'm trying to think of one like Pharmetrics is a big CRO. I won't list any because I don't we could be here all day. But those are like those third party vendors. Optum, some of those big ones that generate a lot of data and economic evaluations for us. We work with
Okay.
them to do some of that research. And I think that's a space that people tend to go into if they don't do a fellowship. They try to maybe consider the consulting space because we consult with those like pharma on the consulting side, the pharmaceutical industry, we are their clients. So you have first hand interaction with, how we want an analysis to be ran,
Yeah.
how we want an economic model to be driven. And then you are the one that has the skill sets to do so. Because we're going to you for that analysis. You can work across multiple disease states. So yeah, the pharma is your client if you're working for a CRO. And so that segue into pharma after working in that space is almost, I wouldn't say seamless, but it makes a lot of sense. You have a lot of experience in that space. So yeah,
Oh, shit. Okay, I was
you
about
got options.
you got options. All right, so you kind of touched on it. I was going to say, what is the benefit of having a pharmacist in this role? But you pretty much hit that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the clinical credibility is big. All of the skill sets that we have as pharmacists, working with patients, working with medications, and that clinical mindset that we have, those skills easily transfer into, okay, we need all of these things to generate research in this space, in
Yes.
this disease state. It just it's a recipe for success. And so that's why I think since I started in this role, or I started in pharma back in 2019, 2020. Since now, PharmDs have exploded in industry, especially in roles like HEOR, because we are able to, again, define not just if this product works, but is it worth it? Like, what are the true clinical, economic, and patient-related value that will drive those decisions?
Yeah.
That's what we do as pharmacists.
And having your master in public health is just the cherry on top.
Yeah, they really did like that master's degree.
Okay.
They really did like that. So when I was interviewing for fellowships, um, I had the master's of public health on my resume. And they were really intrigued with the skill sets that I learned in that degree. And because my master's degree is in health policy and management. And at the time, UNC, I think, had 4 disciplines. It was maternal health, epidemiology, I think something with behavioral, and then the health policy and management. And I always wanted to, at some point, drive decisions from a policy perspective when it comes to utilizing evidence and research. So I knew I wanted to have that health policy background, and so that was what my degree was about: understanding the U.S. healthcare system, ins and outs of how our healthcare system works, all of the different programs and softwares and coding and how we generate data.
Yeah.
those programs were, again, transferable to you being an HEOR researcher. So they gravitated towards that, and so it was helpful. And then I don't think I mentioned this, but while I was doing my 2-year PharmD postdoc fellowship, I got another master's degree in essentially health economics and outcomes research. Rutgers called it the HOPE program. Some may know about this, but it's the health outcomes policy economics. Essentially, you just switch the letters around. So I got that because I wanted to just gain more skill sets and just be more abreast to the technical side of HEOR, how to be a researcher, how to be a modeler, or how to model, and how to make those clinical and economic evaluations precisely, and be, have those skill sets to be transferable in whatever gamut that I'm in. And so I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. And Rutgers was offering the program throughout the fellowship. And so that, in addition to my public health, was just a beautiful recipe for you to be a great candidate anywhere. And so, yeah.
What is the experiential background of the ideal candidate applying to an HEOR starting position?
That's a great question. Ideal background. I think having some type of clinical professional degree is high on the list. So a PharmD, a master's degree. You don't have to have both, but I think one or the other. And so I think having that educational background is one of those things, standards that you need. The biggest things is just knowing what HEOR is and having HEOR experience. So what do I mean by that is, early in, if you're a pharmacy student and you are not in your 4th year, but you're maybe second, 3rd year, you have some time, get try to be a part of an HEOR research project. And what does that look like? That could be a qualitative study, that could be a observational study. Maybe your team is looking at, what's the impact of, a specific molecule or drug on, you know, survival, or, some type of outcome. That's an HEOR based study. It may not have health economics and outcomes research in the subject line or the title, but anything qualitative anything related to patients and outcomes is something that I think people should have experience with.
Yeah. Some who've done some internships or shadowing in
Yes.
pharmaceutical industries or
Yes. Those are as well. Internships, I think research, again, things that are relevant for HEOR will be important. Whether it be like patient related, it could be with the VA, it could be some projects that you're working on, but does it tie to some type of like value impact for a patient or for within a disease state? And again, you can frame some of the things that you're doing to make it relevant for HEOR.
Okay.
If you don't be discouraged if you can't find something that specifically says health economics and outcomes research. I guarantee you, if you are able to, get an internship at like the CDC or the VA, or even with your lab or the pharmacy you work at or the hospital you're at. HEOR, the breadth of it is the clinical piece. And as clinicians, we already are, we're already in a position to have that knowledge and that skill base. I think the main thing is having the technical research skills. So if you're able to hop into that, do an internship with that, get a research project in that space, that I think that just sets you up well to have that knowledge base. Because you don't have to have all the things. So like you said, what's the standard? What's the answer to get into HEOR? There really is no right answer, but I think if you are doing the right things or putting yourself in position to reframe all your things or frame things, your experiences for HEOR, and knowing how to explain your passion or your reason for wanting to pursue a career in HEOR, I think you're setting yourself up well. Knowing HEOR platforms to help support and understand what's going on in the HEOR world that you could utilize and speak to in interviews or, on your CV. So like ispor.org is a really big HEOR resource. They have things like certifications, they got classes, they got courses. They're talking about HEOR research and trends on a daily basis. Like, you could just pick up verbiage and language on there and put it on your CV, right? So things like that, like, I wanna say pursuing having that educational background is key, right? I think putting yourself in position to fully understand what are the skill sets and the things I need to be successful in HEOR.
Yeah.
I think research is a big part of that. If you're able to take a course in like pharmacoeconomics or observational or HEOR, like outcomes research or something like that, take it, whether that be through your school or through a third party. Again, anything that you can use to add to your repertoire of knowledge
Yeah.
when it comes to HEOR. Those are things that are going to set you apart. Um, and then having the other like soft skills, knowing, you want to make sure you can communicate well and you can tease out like you have a skill set too. There's so much mess and fluffiness and distraction and noise, but if you know how to pull out the important parts, so big thinker yet a strategic thinker, critical thinker, those are skill sets that will be useful in HEOR. So yeah, I think those are like the biggest ones that will make you successful in the space.
And what would your advice be to a practicing pharmacist who is like, you know what, someone who's in the clinical space, they don't have any industry
Yeah.
experience? Is there a way for them to set themselves up to where they could transition into
Yeah.
HEOR?
And I think people who are already pharmacists, already practicing, like all hope isn't lost. Like there's always an opportunity to make that transition. For you, it looks different, right? You're not like in school. You're not trying to, tag along on any research project. But I think depending on where you work as a clinical pharmacist, I think what you need to do is, I would say, utilize those platforms that I mentioned, the ispor.org. They offer a lot of free and you know things that you have to pay for in terms of like seminars and courses and certificates. I would get those things under your belt because you have the clinical credibility. But I think any little thing to help you transition and garner those skills for the technical and research and being able to speak to them
Yeah.
just showcases, okay, this would be a strong candidate that knows what they will be doing in an HER role, right? So it's not just the clinical credibility, but just doing your homework, doing your due diligence to help you set yourself up for this type of role. So doing all the thing, like I would say look up HER roles on LinkedIn. Look at the job description and figure out, okay, how can I position myself who's already been in the workforce for a while. And so you'll be surprised. Like again, we hold that clinical value and these spaces want that. They
Yeah.
need that. So, I think that you hold the upper hand by having not only just a PharmD, but have been working in the workforce for a while. So I say go for it. Look at roles that you're interested in. Look at the job description. Join the courses if you need to online.
Yeah.
And that just kind of builds your skill set so that when you do have the interview, you can speak to, I may not have the experience, but I have the wherewithal.
Yeah.
And really, sometimes that's all we're looking for.
Yeah.
Because you'd be surprised how many people are not even privy to what HEOR is and are trying to pursue a role in HEOR. So if you can do your homework, do your due diligence, I promise you the transition is probably a bit more seamless than you think, even if you've been practicing in the clinical space.
Amazing. That's good news.
Yeah, absolutely.
For those who are in pharmacy school and they're like, I'm divided between pursuing residency or fellowship. Are there residencies at all for HEOR or is it fellowships?
To my knowledge, it's fellowships.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if they want to pursue HEOR, they need to decide fellowship route.
Fellowship route.
Okay.
Especially if you're in pharmacy school. I think now don't get me wrong, I've heard a couple success stories where students go straight into industry without a fellowship.
But they usually have a connection.
Usually have a connection or, they maybe did an internship and networked that way and they're not as common, I'll say that. So if you're a
They are
student,
the exception.
exception to the rule.
Just the clear.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so if you wanna pursue a role in HEOR and you're a pharmacy student, start looking at PharmD postdoc fellowships. And then there's nuances with that. Location. Do you want to relocate across the country? Do you want to do 1 year versus 2 year fellowship? They also have academia affiliated HEOR PharmD fellowship programs where 1 year you're with the school doing the classes, taking the courses. Maybe they're offering you a master's degree already in HEOR or some affiliated discipline. And then the second year you're at the company.
Okay.
But then with 1 year fellowships, and I'm sure, some of the colleagues who are chiming in who've done fellowships, I just feel like with 1 year fellowships, it's not a full 12 months in industry because you got to factor in, holidays, company shutdowns during the Christmas break. People are out of town, out of office during the summertime. Other company shutdowns that may happen. And so you're really only getting about maybe 8 to 9 months instead of 12 months. And so you have to ask yourself, is that enough time for you to transition from a fellow to a full-time employee? Do you think you'll get everything you need to get the visibility that you need to have, the skill sets that you need to obtain to then go from fellow, someone I'm under someone, to I am now the study lead?
Yes.
And so these are things that you gotta, put into consideration when you're looking at fellowships. But yeah, if you are getting ready to start your 4th year, I would say I'd give it a full 9 to 12 months before mid-year, because mid-year looks different if you're fellowship based or residency based.
Which is usually in December.
Yes, usually in
yeah.
December. But again, timing is different. Because back when I was applying, you interviewed at mid-year. But now I'm hearing you are able to interview before mid-year. And matter of fact, I think I'm hearing, if you got accepted into the program before mid-year, so before December. So looking at, IPHO, Industry Pharmacist Organization, I believe .com. It might be .org. Check both. But that's a great resource for pharmacy students who are considering industry, because it gives you a full list of not just the fellowship programs that are being offered, but just insight in the different functional areas in industry to help you to kind of decide, okay, what is this functional area, and do I gravitate to what they're doing and what I want to do in a career? So those are resources that you can utilize to help you make those decisions. So yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. It's you if you give yourself enough time to do so and you maximize your opportunity to
Yeah.
do the research, network with the proper people. LinkedIn is your friend. And I know that's so cliche, but LinkedIn is your friend. There's so many more PharmDs and professionals in industry. They have the company name in their, you can see where they work, what company they work for. Reach out to them, network with them. And if they don't respond because they're busy or they're like me and does a horrible job checking their LinkedIn messages, go reach out to someone else and network and put yourself out there and be able to, ask for 30 minutes of their time so you can ask the questions to get insight in what they do and how they prepared and how they got to where they are. So it's a lot, but this is your career. These are the next steps into you no longer a student and you're a professional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for those who are also considering whether they want to get a master's in public health, when should they be looking at that
Yeah.
in their pharmacy school curriculum?
So
I'm gonna ask
Yeah.
a follow-up. And when you answer that, which type of master public health degrees would be most beneficial
Okay.
for HEOR?
Absolutely. I'll answer the second question first. So again, it depends on what your school is offering, if they're even offering dual degree programs. But if they are, great. If that's something of interest to you, definitely look into what those opportunities look like. Depending on what school you go to, depends on the disciplines in the master's program. I think the most relevant disciplines for HEOR when it comes to master's degrees would be health policy, because you're driving policy makers are decision makers when it comes to accessing quality care, right? Epidemiology is a big one. We work very closely with epidemiologists when we're generating and analyzing data.
Yeah.
Maybe a master's in biostats. But that's if you no, I think that would be a of a good one too because again, it draws in those research technical skills that you'll need to utilize. Like you'll probably be able to help the vendors with coding and proper data sources and evaluations of the data because you have those backgrounds, which you contribute additional value to the team because maybe they won't have to hire a vendor because I got you because you got those skills. So I think those would be the most specific disciplines for a master's degree that I think would draw extra value if you're considering HEOR.
Yeah.
Now the timing, I wish I could have like a poll, like who all's a fourth year? But I think the earlier the better.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times these master's degree programs could be 1 to 2, maybe sometimes 3 years. And so we all know the PharmD programs tend to be 4. So the quicker you can get it done, the better, right? So for me, my full journey was 5 years instead of 4 because I did the dual master's degree and I could do my master's degree in 2 semesters instead of 4 semesters. And so they offer some of these different opportunities to do it. You just have to figure out what that looks like for your particular school. But I'd say the earlier the better. So I learned about the dual degree program my first year of pharmacy school.
Okay.
I applied maybe the spring semester of my first year, I want to say.
That's early. Yeah.
It's early, yeah. Either the spring semester of my first year or the fall semester of the following year, the second year. It was within that 1 to 2 year window. And then I finished the dual degree program after my third year. Because one of the rules was I had to do 3 consecutive years with the pharmacy program. Then I go over to the public health school, do those 2 semesters, and then come back and do my 4th year APPEs, IPPEs, right? Again, it may look different for, different schools, but that was the arrangement for UNC. So I was able to get that done because I found out about the dual degree programs early.
Yeah.
And so I was able to apply and figure out what that structure was going to look like. So the earlier the better. If you're closer to the latter part of your pharmacy school career, like 3rd year, 4th year, do some internal work with oneself to figure out if you want to prolong. Because at this point, if you think back, we were like, we're almost done. We're just trying to get through. So if you want to pursue it in that later stage, you can. It just means that you may end up doing 2-year master's degree instead of 1, depending on the structure. But that's not to say it can't be done. Or you can consider courses, specific HEOR courses, maybe with your public health school. You just don't have to do the full degree, but maybe there's room as you're taking your PharmD classes, you could add a couple classes with the public health school. I think I actually did that before I did or after I was wrapping up my MPH. But so those are opportunities if, to get that coursework and that experience if you're kind of later into pharmacy school, getting ready to graduate. Now, if you're 4th year, you might just want to maximize the opportunities that you are currently have. Maybe you've already been working in the pharmacy arena. Maybe you have a couple of research projects or could, tag along on a project, utilize those HEOR platforms that I talked about. And then again, reframing all of your experiences you've built up along those years and make it relevant for HEOR. All hope is not lost because you don't have an MPH or because you don't have 3 HEOR research projects. But there's so many resources that you can utilize to figure out, okay, where my knowledge base needs to be that I could speak confidently in an interview to be an HEOR fellow.
And you recommended that they just get on LinkedIn and find people. And because that's literally what you did. You're not telling them to do anything that you haven't done.
Exactly.
You found out what you would consider relatively like the last minute sliding into home plate timeline that you wanted to do HEOR.
Yeah. And I think I touched on this. So yeah, at the last minute, 4th quarter of the game, 4th year pharmacy school, I was like, let's bring HEOR back because I had put it in the back burner 2nd year, brought it back. It's like 4th quarter for trying to make that decision, head into wrapping up school and figuring out what my life looks like post pharmacy school. And I knew I wanted to do fellowship. So we're 3 months before mid-year. And that's when I decided, you know what? We're not gonna do medical affairs. We're gonna do HEOR. Don't do what I did. So that's when I had to figure out, okay, who do I need to talk to garner as much insight inside the pharmaceutical industry, inside HEOR as quickly as and humanly possible as I can, so that I could change all of my application materials from medical affairs to HEOR, and how to reframe all the great experiences that I had accomplished, working at the CDC, doing the research at the HIV department at the lab at UNC, like, and reframing all of those things to make it relevant for HEOR. I had to do that within 3 months. Do not recommend any of you do that. But if you do, you LinkedIn, like I went to LinkedIn and I stalked people. Stalked is probably a strong word, but literally, like I once I figured out, okay, it was going to be HEOR. I wanted to work in pharma. I put in descriptors, HEOR this or HEOR scientists, and all the people who worked at HEOR from different walks of life, from fellows to senior VPs. I talked to all of them.
Yeah.
And every person that I talked to gave me a different story, a different journey. And I was able to pull from every 30-minute conversation that I had. And it helped me formulate my CV and reframe my experiences. And had I not have talked to those people, I probably wouldn't have known how to reframe, have the language and the verbiage and the foundation to do so.
Yeah.
So LinkedIn, ladies and gentlemen, is your friend. Okay. And I'm now on the other side of it, but when I was a student, I was trying to reach out to so many people as possible, and some people didn't get back to me in a timely fashion, but a lot of people did. So if you don't hear from one person, go to the next and reach out to those relevant folks in those spaces that you want to be in and ask them, what is your day-to-day like? How did you get an HEOR? What are some of the challenges that you're facing in your current role? What did you wish you did differently? Like, and you're asking these questions to different people in different spaces in HEOR that help inform what you want to do and how you want to do it, and reframe your the things that you've done and make it relevant so that you're best prepared for an HEOR fellowship interview. So it worked out. But if you can do it not in 3 months before mid-year and 3 years before that, so you can get all the skills and get all the research done and just really have that freedom to figure out, what all HEOR has to offer, that would be my best recommendation.
Yeah. It sounds like the earlier that allows you to have an advantage because you can move more intentionally
Yes,
and strategically.
absolutely.
But
1000%.
But even if you don't figure it out until the end of pharmacy school or after pharmacy school, you still can make a way.
Yes. And that's the beautiful thing about it,
Yeah.
because we're already ahead of the game as pharmacists. We have that clinical credibility that really does speak to the industry, and there's a need for us
Yeah.
more than ever now. So
Yeah. Any last words for them, Ashley? Anything that I failed to ask that you think is important for them to know as they're making their decisions and weighing their options?
no, I really think that this is such a beautiful platform to inform the students. Like this is something that I wish I had when I was in pharmacy school. If anyone has any additional questions or thoughts on anything I've said or mentions, or wish I kind of took a deeper dive into, happy to connect with anyone offline and have more discussion about it.
All right, it's time to slide into them LinkedIn. It's like she's lit
Listen, I'm serious. I better see you guys in my DMs, and I'm gonna check too.
paying it forward. She's paying it
Absolutely,
forward.
absolutely. I know what it's like. I used to be there.
Thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you.
It's also an honor for me to have you here.
Absolutely.
And this conversation has basically created 2 spin-off episodes for those of you
I love it.
who are on the lookout for what's next. We're going to have an episode. I'm bringing Ashley back, and we are going to be talking about the dual PharmD MPH program process, specifically more in depth. That really won't be covering HEOR, but we will get into more of like the pros and cons, why you should do that path, right?
Absolutely.
And then we're also going to talk about fellowships because you said it has changed significantly.
Yeah.
not necessarily, I won't be having that conversation with you, but your mentee
Yeah.
who has just been through that
Oh,
pathway. So he's
absolutely.
fresh from the process, fresh from the
Yes,
heats,
yes,
So
yes.
he's going to be giving us a strategic breakdown of how to be successful in the fellowship path as well.
Mhm.
So I'm excited.
I'm excited. This is good stuff, man. Like, I can't reiterate enough how much value this would have been for me when we were in pharmacy school.
Well, we thank you for watching, everyone. Stay tuned, subscribe so you can get notifications of when those episodes drop. We also have the newsletter so that you can get thorough breakdowns of all the nitty-gritty that we talk about. We are going to close, as always, wishing that you will be blessed and that you stay curious. And we are out.
Bye.
You just watched an episode of Pharmacy Pathways, a podcast created to help current and future pharmacists find their happy place in life. I'm your host, DomThePharmacist, and I interview different pharmacists from various careers, asking them the questions you'll likely need answered in order to know if that particular role aligns with your interests, passions, skill sets, and talents. If there's a specific topic or career you'd like to see featured, you can let me know by filling out the audience feedback survey on my website. And if you'd like to be a guest, there's a guest sign-up form on my website as well. Both of those links are in the episode description. Thank you for watching. Stay blessed and stay curious. I'm out.